Hey everybody, it's Miss Mika again from Cape Cod County, beautiful. I'm not exactly going to read this book to you. I'm going to kind of go through and just talk about things a little bit, but we're going to talk about bees for a little bit, okay? We're going to talk about the bee book, alright? And I'll show you some pictures here and there, but this is kind of a longer book, but there's some good information in it, and bees are so very important to us. I know a lot of people don't like bees, but if we didn't have bees, we wouldn't have food to eat. And so bees are super duper important, and we need to try to take care of them, okay? There's a lot of different bee species around the earth, but the most important for us is the honeybee, okay? And honeybee populations, the number of honeybees is kind of going down. So we really need to do some things to help our honeybees, all right? So some bees are big, some are small, some can be angry and like to attack you. Some can cook. Some you might know already, okay? But the most famous bee is the honeybee. So there's something called the Wallace's giant bee. It's big. It's found in Indonesia, so don't worry, it's not from around here. There's a really small one called a dwarf bee, and you have to have a magnifying glass to see it. It's so little. Then there's killer bees, which we've heard a lot of talk about, killer hornets and all that stuff. They're not, they like to sting you. Then there's Japanese honeybees. They can cook something that's trying to hurt them with their body heat. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Bumblebees are the fluffy bees that you see buzzing around your yard. And then you have the honeybees. So here's a picture of some of the different bees. Okay, and they're all super important to us, every one of them. Okay, so a honeybee is an insect. It has 3 body parts: head, thorax, and abdomen. It has 6 legs, 2 pairs of wings. They live together in a group called a colony, and then their colony is within a beehive. Okay, so in the beehive, the honeybee makes beeswax and it makes honey, all of which are very important to us. We like to eat honey, but we also use beeswax for a lot of different things. So the honeybee has to collect pollen from the flower. That's really important for the flower because it moves the pollen from flower to flower so that flowers can make their fruit and their seeds and all that stuff. So that's why they're so important. If we didn't have honeybees, we wouldn't have some of the fruit that we have and that we enjoy. But for them, they're after the nectar. So they take the nectar back to the hive and they make honey. Okay, and they store it there. So when it's warm in the spring and the summer, honeybees are collecting nectar and pollen. They use the nectar to make honey, which will feed them through the fall and the winter. And of course, they make enough that we can eat some too. When it's cold, honeybees can't fly in the cold, so they stay in their hive and they eat the honey that was stored for the warmer months. And they huddle up in a tight little ball, and the queen's right in the middle. She's kind of important because she's the one that has all the babies. Alright, so here is all the different parts of the bee. So you have the antenna. There's its mouth where it collects all the nectar. Here's its eyes. It actually has 5 eyes. Here is the pollen baskets. There's where the pollen gets on there and it moves from flower to flower. Here is the spiracles, and that's what they breathe through right there. And then the stomach is where they keep the honey or keep the nectar until they can get back to the hive and make it into honey. So that's all pretty cool, isn't it? Oh yes, and here's the part we're all scared of, the stinger. That's another part, isn't it? Okay. So they use the stinger to protect them. Only the girl honeybees can sting, though. The males can't. So does a honeybee die when it stings? Yes, it does. When the spikes get stuck in the animal and the stinger gets pulled out of the bee, and this honeybee can't survive without its stinger, so it will die. The queen is lucky though; her stinger doesn't get stuck, and she can sting and sting again, and not die. Okay. So why do bees buzz? It's because their wings are beating so fast. That's why they buzz. That's what you're hearing is their wings. Alright, so we know that honey is really important to honeybees because they need it to survive the cold months. We like it because it tastes really good. So for 1 teaspoon of honey, it's the work of 12 honeybees to make 1 little teaspoon. A jar of honey, that bee has to fly 55,000 miles. That's like going around the world 1.5 times to make enough honey. That's a lot, isn't it? Okay. So we know that there are honeybees in the wild, but there's also people who keep honeybees, and they are called beekeepers. And they keep beehives that protect the honeybees from cold and rain. It's not one that they have to make. In the wild, honeybees will get into old trees and rocks and caves and stuff. But when a person keeps bees, they have a beehive. Looks like a little house. And there's the beekeeper with his clothes on. He wears all this so he doesn't get stung. Because nobody likes to get stung, do they? So they have to really know their bees. They have to be calm so that the other bees will be calm. They have to know how to extract the honey, how to get the honey out of the hive without upsetting the bees and getting stung. So they have to be pretty close to their honeybees to understand them. And this is something that's been going on for years and years and years. People have been collecting honey for thousands of years. Alright, so what happens in the hive? Well, you've got the queen bee right here. And there's only 1 queen in the hive. She'll live for about 5 years. She's the mother of most of the bees, and she'll lay 2,000 eggs every day. Then we have the worker bee, which is the girl. There's thousands of those. They live about 40 days. And their job is to clean and guard the hive, to go hunt for honey and to make the honey. And then you have the drone. And there's hundreds of those, and they live only a few weeks. They don't do much work. And in fact, when they're needed in the summer to mate with the queen, and after they mate with the queen, they die. Or they get kicked out. They get kicked out of the hive. So that's it on them. Alright, so they collect nectar from the flower with their tongues. And they store it in their stomachs. They fly back to the hive, pass the nectar to another bee using their mouths. This bee makes spit bubbles with the nectar until it turns into honey, which is stored in these wax cells right here. The bees seal the honey in each cell with a wax lid to keep it fresh. And then the warm hive is the perfect place to make honey. They flap their wings to keep the air flowing through the hive to keep the colony dry. That's how they make honey. So when you're eating honey, you're eating bee spit, aren't you? Tasty bee spit, isn't it? So we already talked about how they pollinate the flower. So let's look at a picture here. Here is a flower. And right here is a part of the flower called the stamen. And it is making pollen. Now the nectar is way down here in the center of the flower, so the bee has to go through these petals, and the petals attracts the bee. They see these colors, and they pick one flower that they're going to get their honey from for the day. So if this was the type of flower, this is the only flower they would get nectar from for that day, and that attracts them. They have to pass through the stamen that has the pollen on it, so the pollen's going to rub off onto their leg as they go down into the middle to get their nectar. So then they'll leave that plant, go to another plant, and they will pass by all these plant parts, and down in here they'll rub off the pollen, and then the flower will take the pollen from the other plant and be able to make a seed from that, or the fruit. Well, to make a seed they have to make fruit, because the fruit contains the seed. So that's how we get the fruits and vegetables that we eat. And if it wasn't for bees, we wouldn't have that. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So they are super important for that. So it says honeybees are very busy making honey and pollinating plants, but there's more that goes on in the honeybee's world. What does the queen bee like to do? How is a honeybee born? Can honeybees talk to each other? So the queen bee will lay an egg. The egg hatches into a larva. The larva spins a cocoon, becoming a pupa. and then it will come out as an adult bee. So there's the egg, the larva, the pupa, the adult. That's complete metamorphosis right there that bees go through. So the worker builds cells out of beeswax and fills them with honey. A nurse bee feeds the larva. They feed it royal jelly and pollen and honey. If a larva is fed royal jelly for more than 3 days, it'll grow into a queen bee. The worker looks out for danger and guards the entrances. The rest of the life of the worker bee is going and collecting nectar from flower to flower and bringing it back to the nest. Is that not cool? So there's a picture of all the stuff that happens. So to be a queen, you have to eat lots of royal jelly. That's pretty neat, isn't it? So the queen bee, she is longer and bigger than the rest of the other bees. She doesn't wear a crown though, okay? She's just bigger and longer. She has a special smell so that other bees that come near the colony know that there's a queen there and that she's alive and healthy. She lets off this smell so that they know. And if there is no queen, the colony can't survive. They have to have a queen to lead them. Okay, so she has other bees that feed her, groom her, pass on her scent to other bees in the nest. She's really just laying eggs. That's all she's doing. Okay, so when a new queen is needed, the old queen lays an egg in a big cell called a queen cup. And so queen eggs are bigger. They have to have more room to grow. So they need to eat lots of royal jelly. So there can only be one queen in the nest. So when the queen is born, if more than one queen is born, they fight by stinging each other, and the survivor is crowned queen. Okay, so she'll spend her life laying eggs, and she'll lay as many as one egg every 20 seconds. If she's slower than that, her colony might replace her. So she has to make sure that she lays plenty of eggs. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Alright, so how do bees talk to each other? They dance. When they fly in certain directions and stuff, that's showing the direction of the flower that they're going to go to for that day. It might tell how far that flower is. And then it'll tell the type of flower, because they only pick one flower every day. Like if they're going to get nectar from a lily, then they do a certain dance. They waggle and they fly in a direction to show which direction the flowers are in. They do another little dance that tells how far away the flowers are, and then they do another dance that tells the type of flower. And they know all this stuff. Isn't that amazing how that all works? Alright, so a swarm of bees. When you find a large group of honeybees, it's called a swarm. Alright, it can be the queen and up to 20,000 worker bees. And it's when a nest is overcrowded just before a new queen is born. The old queen gets ready to swarm around with half of the worker bees. And they eat lots of honey. The queen is not a strong flyer, so the swarm has to, they're kind of protecting her along the way. She leaves the nest to find a new nest so that the new queen can take over. And it said, but even though a swarm of bees may look scary, they're not usually dangerous. As long as their hunt for a home doesn't get disturbed, they will not sting, because that's all they're looking for is a new home. So there's nothing to be scared of. Alright, so there are things that eat honeybees. There's several hummingbirds, a couple other birds. There's hornets and robber flies and dragonflies and praying mantis and hornets and bears and shrews and possums and toads and bullfrogs and raccoons and badgers and wood frogs and skunks. All of these things will either eat the honey or eat the bees. Look at that. They got a lot of predators. So it says bees may be little insects, but they are very important to our environment. They have an effect on plants and animals all over the world, from a flower to a big furry bear. But many types of bees are disappearing, and it's not because animals are eating them. There's a much bigger problem that makes it difficult for the bee to survive. So one is climate change. Another is the loss of habitat, losing their wooded area. Another is disease, because humans bring in diseases that make bees unhealthy, and then using pesticides, bug sprays and stuff, that weakens the bees as well. So don't use them on crops, on your gardens and stuff like that, because when they go to get the nectar from those plants, they're eating that poison, and that's what's killing them. So without bees, we have no food. Okay? So it's really important that we have bees so that we can have food. We would have to find new ways to pollinate. We would have to try to pollinate all the flowers ourselves, which would be super hard. My daughter and I tried to experiment. We took a Q-tip and took it to some okra blooms that we had, and we had to put the Q-tip all the way in and get pollen on it, and then take it and put it onto another flower and rub it around on the inside. So could you imagine doing that to all the flowers where you live at? Because especially where we live at, there's tons of flowers and stuff. We might even have to make robot bees who could do the pollination for us. So that is, that would be really good. That would be really awful, wouldn't it? So we need bees to pollinate, to help our crops, so that we can have food. Mammals need the wildflowers to find food. That's also home for insects and stuff. Birds nest and eat insects and seeds and berries. So we definitely need bees. So what can we do to help? Well, first you can plant a pollinator garden. And so you could look and see what kind of plants attract bees, and that you would want to plant those kind of plants. Don't be scared of bees and try to swat them and kill them. Okay, they're not gonna hurt you. They will realize that you're not a flower, and they will fly away. You could learn more about bees and watch them at work. You can tell other people. You can make a bee hotel like this right here, so that bees could live in. That would be really cool. Looks like it's made out of straws or bamboo sticks or something. So sometimes bees don't live in colonies, and that would give bees that are kind of by themselves a place to live. So some plants that bees do like is crocus and irises and lavender and mint and sunflowers and ivy. So that's some of the things you could plant, and they're all native, so those are totally cool to plant. And try not to use any kind of pesticides or anything like that. No Roundup, no bug sprays or anything like that, because those chemicals will really hurt the bees. Alright, so we don't want to lose bees. They are super hard workers, and they're really important to our food supply. So I know this might not have been like a really intense read and stuff, and I know it's kind of hard to look at pictures and stuff, but if you have the bee book, that would be awesome pictures to look at. And it's super important to help keep our honeybees. Without them, we wouldn't have flowers or food or lots of other different things. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed. It would be really cool if you live near a place, live near somebody who has a beehive. You can go visit them. Strange's Honey Farm in Del Rio sometimes does trips and stuff. You could go check them out and see how they do all their honey production and everything. That would be pretty cool. Know lots of other people who have their own personal hives. You could watch a beekeeper at work. That would be pretty cool too, wouldn't it? So all kinds of cool things you can do with that. You could make a honeybee out of something that normally gets thrown away. Like take a soup can and make a honeybee out of it. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Send us pictures if you do that. So we'd love to see any kind of little activities that you come up with this bee book, alright? So we will talk to you later. We hope you have a great day. I'll see you later. Bye.